As most of you guys know, I'm Erin Thomas, and today I am here joined with Rick Rucker, the man, the myth, the legend when it comes to lending in Cleveland. I wanted to put this together. I think your value as an investor agent is really based on the network that you surround yourself with, the value you can provide your clients based on the people that you've surrounded yourself with and can give to them. So I want to do vendor spotlights every month to really feature somebody that I work with, someone that's really good at their profession, what they do, what they specialize in, provide a little bit of information. And I am honored to have you as my first person.
I feel privileged.
So Rick, why don't you tell everybody who you are, name of your company.
Yep. So name of our company is Equity Capital Mortgage Group. You can follow us on Instagram, actually, Equity CMG. But basically, so I started in the business in 2005 with a broker at the time. It was primarily subprime, but we also did like some conventional stuff. Mm-hmm. And just learned really the hard way to do it, which is like cold calling, like public record leads, like hard-nosed selling, boiler room, all those movies that they talk about. Pre-crash was basically the company I worked for.
Right.
But one of the most, I will say, bar none, one of the best sales groups that I've ever been around to date. I mean, I don't think I could have asked for anything better for my first 3 years in the business. Market kind of crashed. I had always done music, ironically, which is, you know, we had past in the past involved in music and entertainment, but I had always done music when I was younger. So for a period of time, I actually lived out of a suitcase and I did like artist management and record label promotion. I worked for thisis50.com, so G Unit Records. Shout out to Fifth. He really gave me a lot of insight on the music industry. Ozone Magazine, Julia Beverly. So I really kind of took a step back from the real estate piece and went after my passion. And unfortunately, the record industry kind of got hit 2 years after the crash. So about 2010, I got back into underwriting for PNC Bank. I think that probably really had the biggest impact on my sales career, because once you understood how to structure files and you're looking at files at a higher volume, you kind of like, you get the gist of like what to look for. Right. So did that for about a year, and then I went to work for another larger company everybody's familiar with in the market, Nations Lending. Bill and Jeremy, really good friends of mine to this day. Mentors of a lot of us, like a lot of us that have been in the industry for longer than 5 years, contrary to popular belief, we're all like kind of friends or know each other. But you know, on the low end, a lot of times it's like a dog-eat-dog world in the LL world, but most of us know each other. So worked for them for a while underneath a branch. They shut down my branch. They brought me to corporate. So in that environment, I learned like high volume, how to look at files. Like, I mean, we were, you know, that was during the HARP era where you didn't need an appraisal or anything like that. Right. So, you know, I mean, I was looking at 40, 50, 60 files in a month, you know what I'm saying, that we were closing. Yeah. So, I mean, I think one of our best months was like 85 loans or something like that. So it just taught me like higher volume, like again, how to like triage, assess, stuff like that. And then 2013, I stepped out, did my own thing. I had a business partner initially, and we kind of, you know, did our own thing in like it's called like net branching or franchising, whatever. Did that, and then came to Gold Star in 2016, I want to say. I think it was 2016, and I've been with Gold Star ever since. Gold Star actually helped us create Equity Capital Mortgage Group, and my mentor, Dan Milstein, was one of the #1 loan originators in the country from 2009, 2011. Right. So he's just really an inspirational guy to me. Came from the Ukraine, was a political refugee, and just very similar backgrounds, like, right. You know, comes from the scrap. And I think when you come from the scrap, like every deal you get, you just look at from a different light, because you're like, I got to make this deal work. And that's, you know, my entire team as a group, you know, we just really try to scrap through files and figure out how to make them work, whether it be in the investor space or, you know, first-time home buyer. You know,
your team's probably one of the favorite reasons I like working with you, besides the fact that you offer so many different types of products. You're homeowner friendly, but you're very investor friendly, which a lot of lenders aren't. but you are really inclusive when it comes to your team. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your team?
So that's a hot button for me. So obviously, if you could imagine, as a minority man in this space, you don't typically see a lot of people of color in the lending space for one reason or another. I don't even think it's not even the lenders, because like I said, these are all guys that are good friends of mine. I just think in general, like a lot of us don't say, hey, why don't I get into lending for one reason or another? But I'm very passionate about it because, what drives Equity Capital Mortgage Group is we want to be focused in on women, minorities, and investors. And that's really our target market. That's really who we focus in on. Obviously, we will work with everybody in the United States. Myself, I'm Black Irish. There's not a lot of us out here. So I was exposed, the first part of my life was like, it was almost like you're in two different worlds. Like when you have immigrant family and they come over and they're speaking like either their native tongue or they're speaking with like, in our world, like brogue from different areas of Ireland, you just kind of grew up in two different worlds. And that's what I knew was two different worlds. So it's why it's very passionate, again, a passion of mine for, minorities, especially like immigrant minorities that come to this country. Like we take our time to sit down with them, especially dealing with investors like you do. A lot of times we talk to people and, you can maybe, the average Joe doesn't have the temperament to deal with somebody that they can't understand. But me, I think it's a beautiful thing in this country that we work with immigrants and people that come to this country that are trying to embrace American capitalism. But our target market, and you can see obviously by my staff, is specifically women, minorities, and investors in the market, of course.
Right. And I think we have that in common, is that as an investor-only agent, which there's like none of us, and doing commercial multifamily as a female, there's just not a lot of us. There's a stigma that goes around, commercial real estate, and I don't fit that stigma at all. And so I do love that you are so inclusive and, opening everyone's eyes to the opportunities that, anybody can do this. You probably have more females in your staff than I've ever seen in another lending company. And I'll tell you, they're beasts.
We have our meetings every month. And I think sometimes like people don't realize like their inner greatness, and a part of management and the excitement is helping people refine that. But like I was telling my sister the other day in our meeting, I said, you got to understand, I looked up to you when I was a kid. Like I get my toughness from you. I get my competitiveness from you. Like you can surpass anything I ever did. You know what I'm saying? Because you drove me as a kid. All you have to do is apply it to real estate. So, but yeah, it's definitely a passion of mine to see, again, and I was president of the Emerging Leaders Group at the Union Club, and we dealt with just a completely separate set of problems because, 60% of our group was women professionals that were the vice presidents, that were, they were the ones that were head of household. So it's just a separate set of problems. That's where society's going, and the data points towards women home ownership has skyrocketed, single, I'm not going to say single mother homes, but like single female homes in particular have skyrocketed. Minority home ownership, believe it or not, is like skyrocketing. Millennials, the younger generation, again, all of our target market, because we really want younger people to understand, it's actually cool to buy real estate. And that's why some of our partnership affiliations that we have going on with various music artists like Bone Thugs and Harmony, and some of the stuff that we're working on with Rich Paul and other sports management guys is really just saying, hey guys, if you help us get the word out, like we can make lending cool again. You know what I'm saying?
And I love that. I love that. Make lending cool again. I feel very similar in trying to get more women to feel confident in working with investors, but also just investing in them, investing themselves. And I like to say that I feel like I'm kind of changing the face of commercial too, is when 100%. You think of a commercial realtor, me jumping around and having, as my team lead says, spunky personality is not the personality type that you would typically correlate with a commercial agent. So I think that's really awesome. So I think one of the biggest things that comes out, though, is that when it comes from me and my network and the value that I want to be able to provide my clients, it's not just about what you can do on paper. It's about a whole package and a whole person. What you've just said is, you're a good person from the, all the way down, and then you do really great products. So let's talk a little bit more about some of those products. So I know you've released a couple more types of loans that are more investor friendly. Let's talk about some of those.
Yeah. So for the world that doesn't know, there's basically, it's almost like two different worlds. You have conventional Fannie Mae financing, which is typically going to be your first time home buyer, anything 1 to 4 unit. It's going to be strictly under the Fannie Mae criteria, which, Fannie Mae is basically an arm of the government. So the criteria is going to be a little bit more rigorous. The main reason being is before 2008, the criteria was non-existent. So now they've kind of like overcompensated for it. So a lot of times investors come to us and they're like, most self-respecting investors claim nothing on their taxes. And I'm like, yeah, no shit, I know. So what you're referring to right there is the QM stuff, the stuff that any homeowner, if you were going to go and call your lender or your bank or your credit union, those are the type of loans you're going to get. They're all backed by Freddie and Fannie, and it's traditional. Yeah, very traditional financing. Again, everything in the box. I mean, not in the box per se. I mean, you can do 1 to 4 unit, but so that's kind of like the QM world. When you talk about FHA, when you talk about VA, USDA, that all kind of falls into that realm, conventional. And then you have this new space. And this new space is one that's kind of opened up more, especially after March of last year when Fannie Mae came in and said investors have a backstop of 7% investment properties, which kind of caused pricing to skyrocket. So full disclosure, I talked to an investor from Michigan, and he had a loan officer that didn't explain it to him. But once he came to me, he said, okay, I understand. So Fannie Mae came in and basically tried to prevent people from coming in and swooping up all these properties all at once. But it backfired, because then there's 12 million vacant homes because of that 7% backstop, which caused costs to skyrocket for investors. So there was a need for this space of kind of like a hybrid pre-2008, where you have bank statement programs, for instance. So we have a 12-month bank statement program, phenomenal. And what does that mean? So basically that means we will take the last 12 months of your business and personal, and we can utilize that as your income, no tax returns required. So that allows, like we'll say an investor that owns a multifamily business, they would be a great candidate for that because they have high cash flows each month, and we can get them approved. Even beyond investors, though, that's so applicable to a lot of professions. I mean, you can think of a lot of people, if you're a waitress even, like your bank stubs aren't much, but if you can prove that you constantly have this high cash flow coming in, it's going to help you get a home, whether it be an investment property or not. Yeah. And like I said, pre-2008, we had stated programs, we had all this stuff. So bank statement, again, self-employed client, independent contractor, those are great programs for them to qualify in this market. The DSCR, which is kind of the asset-based lending, is probably our hugest product. That is, you have a FICO, you have assets, and you have a cash flowing property, which most investors are going to want a cash flowing property. Then you can go out and buy as many properties as you want. You don't have that Fannie Mae backstop of 10 properties. So you can go out and buy these packages. We've closed a few of those where they're 12, 15, 18 at a time with the same investor, as long as they have at least a 700 FICO and they have a strong asset, based, and then they can go out and do anything. No tax returns, no 4506Ts. We're not pulling any type of taxes or anything like that. So the DSCR stands for debt service coverage ratio. So basically you're taking the rents and the income the property is producing, and you're determining whether you can fund it based on the income it's making and what's going to cover for the the loan amount, right? Correct. Yeah. And honestly, to us, it was like, it's not a big thing, because like yourself in multifamily, you look at the asset as being the property, the person's kind of secondary. In realistic terms, like they should have had products like this, and they kind of did, but they just didn't really do it too good until 2022 hit, and the market went awry, rates were all over the place. So they were like, well, where do we go? And you have to focus in on that group that we've been kind of overlooking for so many years, which is really since 2008. So some private money has come in. These are actually funded typically by like hedge fund investors. A lot of hedge funders are actually liquidating their investment portfolios, but they're getting into the lending space in the
Yeah.
non-QM. So,
And what's cool about it, and you touched on it for a second, is that a lot of people don't know that if you're getting like a traditional conventional loan,
Yeah.
you can only have 10 of those, right?
correct. Yeah.
So once you hit that 10, you just can't buy anymore. You can't invest anymore.
Yeah, you used to not be able to do unless you went to like a commercial bank, which we do have outlets for that. Shout out to my guy Chris Litzler, Marcus and Millichap.
Yeah.
But a lot of times you used to be stuck in that realm, but now it's like it's limitless. And honestly, like we sing from the rooftops to everybody, like the wealth shift is already happening, and you can get on board with it, or you're gonna like your competition is gonna grab it up.
Because let's be realistic. The first property, when you're buying your first investment, it's always the hardest.
Yeah.
But once you get to 10, you've already been bitten by the bug. You're not
Yeah.
ready to stop at
No,
that
you're not
point. So
gonna
what, you're just going to
stop, yeah.
sell and trade? Like that won't
Yeah.
work. So these type of products, you can close under LLCs,
Correct.
which is why you're able to acquire more than you would before, right?
Yeah, you can close under LLCs. Now they're always going to look at your FICO because again, you're a piece of the approval process, but it's not like everything's focused in on you.
Yeah.
So they're going to want to make sure that you can manage money. That's why I said the 700 FICO or
Exactly.
above. Now there's some outlets we have where we can find under that realm if you have really strong assets. A lot of times like underwriting's always, when I was an underwriter, it was who could paint me the best picture, or good underwriters will problem solve and say this is the best way the picture would
Right.
look like if we get this set of information. So
Exactly.
but that's again why my team is so good at what we do, is because there's literally 3 or 4 sets of eyes normally on a file before we even issue a pre-approval letter to anybody.
Right.
If it's non-QM, there's a specific person that we go to internally and we say, hey, does this deal work? If it's like a QM file, a lot of times we'll fast pass it, which our fast pass program allows people to close in 14 days front to back.
If I'm trying to get an investment property under contract for my client, when it comes to the investment world, like how quick you can close is a huge piece of it.
Yeah.
And nobody, if it's a duplex or, an apartment building is a little bit different, but if it's a duplex,
Definitely
a single family, a 4-unit, they're going to expect it to be in a quicker close time frame.
Exactly.
That 30 days just doesn't work.
Yeah.
You're able to, I know you've even done it faster, but I'd like to at least try to hit the 15 days.
Yeah.
So if someone needs to get it done, they can get it done.
Yeah, the biggest thing with the 15-day or the 14-day or whatever is normally like we move as quickly as clients do, and we really set the tone like, hey, we could do whatever you want us to, but you got to move your ass. Excuse my French.
Right.
You got to move quickly because we're not going to be able to move like if you're not giving us
Exactly.
what
They got to get you the documents.
Yeah.
They've got to respond to text, sign the documents quickly. Exactly.
Yeah. But once we get that, my processor, my closer, rock star, bar none, some of the best people I've worked with in the industry. They don't always toot their own horn as much as I do,
Right.
because I don't think they realize how good they are. But we closed the deal, I think 2 weeks ago. It was my sister's deal, and it was like in 11 days, what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And it was an investment property.
Right. I like to say I'm not a listing agent, I'm a closing agent. You can put a listing up and it's just going to sit there forever. That's not what you need to be good at, closing deals. So I've had it where deals have come in front of me. Maybe it was the buying agent came, their lending fell through, and I'm like, call this guy, and then you can come in and you can close the deal and still hit the closing time frame of 30 days, even though their lender wasn't able to do it.
Yeah, and a lot of times, like the reason why their lender again doesn't know how to do it, like anytime, like say Aaron comes to me and the client's been turned down, I'm immediately, and this is my undergrad in accounting. I'm immediately already trying to troubleshoot and say, why did this person not get approved? Like the client that came to me earlier this week, he was looking at an investment property up in Michigan, and there was like some things going on with his lending. But I'm immediately, as soon as I inherit a deal like that, I'm like, well, what could go wrong? What went wrong? Blah, blah, blah. And that comes from the underwriting sphere. And again, my undergrad, which was in accounting, like that's what you're taught to do, is like triage everything that you get. Exactly. So a lot of times we can structure it, clean it up, make it look good on paper, zip it through the process. And to your point, we get them to the closing line.
Exactly. Now, I got into commercial multifamily because I had always worked with investors, and single family investors eventually buy a duplex, and then they eventually buy a 4-unit, and then they're buying 6 units and everything else. And anything above a 4-unit really is considered commercial. So what's cool is you've got this transitioning market of investors who they're not quite commercial. They're not going for the 50 unit buildings. No, they just want a 5 unit, a 6 unit, something along those lines.
Yeah.
And you now are able to offer multifamily products as well.
Yep. We can do small balance multifamily. Typically is going to, the end loan amount needs to be about $250,000. That's after down payment. So 5, 6, up to really 29 units we can do. If it's just like a normal, okay, I want to buy this property, it's already cash flowing. We also have products to do ground up construction 1 to 80 units, which is, like I said, for those those are more like for builders and stuff like that.
Right.
But generally speaking, yes, the 5 to 29, you got an asset, it's pretty much, 70, 80, 90% occupancy rate or whatever. We can help you finance that all day long on a 30 or 40 year term. And we also have 10-year interest only options for that 30 and 40 year term, which is attractive to investors.
I mean, I know our market and our price points, but maybe some of the people, listening and watching don't. How difficult do you think it is to hit that $250,000 price point for commercial? So
generally speaking, if it's a 5 unit, you're talking about what, 50,000 a door. It's probably that's probably flush. I mean, for a 5 unit, like 250 may be a stretch, but 6, 7 unit, 40,000 a door is not uncommon at all.
No, 40,000 a door is. Right now, 40,000 a door is getting you something that typically needs a little bit of work.
Yeah.
When you're in the smaller multifamilies, it might be a little bit closer to that.
Yep.
Now, like you said before, but it's a $250,000 loan amount. So at 50 a door, we actually have a little bit above that because they got a down payment and everything else has to go into it. Right.
Yep.
So there's a little bit more that goes into that. But I don't think 250 a door is that difficult to hit.
Yeah.
But people come to Cleveland because of our cash flow. So I'm not going to say it's the easiest thing to hit either. It's hard to find a 5 unit that's, around that price point. You can.
It is.
It depends on the condition.
Yeah, it depends on the condition. And then a lot of times once you get into that realm, and the one thing that we kind of pride ourselves on is, we like being the money people. So even if we can't do it, the reason why investor friendly people like us, like yourself, is because we'll go finding the money somewhere.
Exactly. I think the best lenders are always the ones that, I like to think I can think creatively and try to get as many deals closed as possible. But when you've got somebody else on your team who's, in the lending side or whatever side it might be on, who's like, what if we did this?
Yeah.
And they can help you put the puzzle pieces together. So between the buyer, between myself as the agent and you as the lender, you've got 3 of us creatively trying to put this jigsaw puzzle together.
Yep.
And it ends up closing more deals successfully. It saves our investors a ton of money in the long term. So I love that. I do. Now, you and I have been working on a pretty cool project with a couple other colleagues.
Very exciting.
Yeah, I know. It's awesome. For those of you who don't know, Rick and I are part of Investor Source CLE, which is us basically there's a group of, 5 of us?
Yeah.
Bringing a new twist to marketing. We want higher level education. Why don't you say a little bit about what you think of that? Yeah,
so Investor Source CLE kind of was like the brainchild of, I think initially Isaac was doing an event at Yacht Club, which was very investor focused, off market deals, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, a lot of deal making
being actually done in real time, which I appreciate because there's nothing worse than going to an event and then you leave and you're like, well, what was that about?
Yeah, you go to these networking events and you don't know anybody. You hook up with someone. No offense to my insurance friends out there, but you're talking to an insurance person the whole time when you came to try and buy a duplex.
Yeah, insurance.
That's never how you want to leave the networking event, right?
Exactly. Insurance or title or, and again, we all have our relationships with those folks already. So
so Isaac's event was really successful, but mainly because you came, they presented deals in front of you and you could actually close the deal.
Yeah, and deals were actually done there. So Isaac and I sat out, and then Wayne came in, and then he was like, Aaron Thomas was like, yeah, Aaron Thomas, that's my girl. Like, yeah, of course, that's a no-brainer. That brings just another outlet that we really need in that space, especially with what we're seeing. Like, I'm getting off-market deals that are like, commercial multifamily. Right. And then our good friend Kaz and Jenny, who work at Icon Cowork, but they're also realtors as well. It was just kind of a no-brainer for us to all team up and focus in on there's two, I feel like there was components that were missing. There's the educational piece, which some people did, but then they overdid it and they started thinking like their shit didn't stink. And like they started smelling, like nobody wants to sit there for 2 hours, like hearing about education. You're just going to lose your audience. You know what I'm saying? So what we're doing is really setting a 30, maybe 45, but primarily a 30-minute window of education, how to assess a deal, what does cash flow mean, how to put the pieces together, what's syndication. I mean, everything you can imagine, we're basically educating people on that piece. And then we have the deal presentation. So we're the only people that I feel in the market doing, it's such a unique group. And then with our spheres of influence, I mean, you're a juggernaut in your space. I'm a juggernaut in my space. Isaac, Wayne, Kaz, Jenny, like it's like putting those worlds together, colliding them. It becomes like something that really catches a lot of steam. And like our first event, sold out within, I mean, it wasn't even 7 days. I mean, I remember you were worried about it being 2 months out. I was like, no.
I know, I was like, you need 60 days before you can market something. What do you mean? I was
like, no, we don't want to.
With 2 weeks of marketing, we had standing room only. Nobody could fit. It was hot in that room. But it was awesome. But one of the things that I think make our event different is that we have brought together, like you kind of touched on, Wayne and Isaac, you and I were all kind of really good experts in our fields. And taking all of that experience, you guys brought me on just because I had more multifamily experience than you do. And, I'm so thankful that you guys did and that you thought enough of me to bring me on like that. But these panel type educational pieces that we're doing, 30 minutes, whatever the topic is, where you get someone who's an expert in the field, and then we bring in an even better expert or someone who's, in real life doing it maybe in a different way. And you get these guided questions where they can learn from that. People can have the Q&A, and then we close it with the deal making, which, like you said, there's nothing else happening that's like it. And then you get so many different viewpoints on the same idea from all the different realms that you need to hear it from.
And it was fun, like our first one, like having you give a perception versus me versus perception versus Isaac. And then, Litzler jumped in and he was in the audience. Like that's what people need to hear because we're all going to look at it from a different lens. You know what I'm saying? But, and no lens is like right or wrong. But when you have that many experts in one room constantly, like we're trying to set you up to win. So like, and everybody knows that based on the group. So,
and the thing too is that people learn in different ways. You could say the same thing to 4 people, maybe only one of them picks up on it. But when you have 4 people saying the same thing in different ways, everyone in the room should pick up on it and take away with what they need. It
was like when I tutored in college, like I never forget, I mean, my calculus teachers, like sometimes she would literally bring me to the front and she'd be like, well, you got a better way to do it. And I'm like, yeah, I do. And she would let me show people how to get to the answer better or explain it better than she was. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody's going to take what somebody says in a different way. So sometimes like having, like you said, 3 or 4 people saying it from a different angle, like really helps them, helps the wheels turn.
And I think the topics that we're touching on are the questions that we're constantly getting asked. So next month, we're doing ours. It's how to not lose money. We're bringing in a good friend of both of ours, of the whole group's, honestly, Anoop, and he's going to tell us a story about how he lost everything, which obviously is no one's goal when they get into investing. And there's some, things you need to put in place, but to hear from somebody else about how they did and how they came back from it. Now he's, a very, very successful investor in Cleveland.
Crushing it.
Crushing it is incredible. And so it's a motivational piece next week for you to understand, but also some real tactics. Do this, don't do this. And hopefully everyone leaves with that. The following week, we're doing like multifamily.
Month.
I say week every time.
You do say week every time.
But we're doing multifamily.
I love watching Jenny sweat when you say next week. She's
she does.
Oh my God.
We're the first Thursday of every month. So if I say week, just ignore me. It's always the first Thursday of every month. Yeah. And, but it's exciting. And so we've got a lot of these really hot button topics, wholesaling, multifamily, things that people really want to know or need to know that we're going to be covering. And I think it's really cool. And hopefully we get even more. We've got a bigger space now, so they don't have to be standing room only or shoved into a little room.
Yes, the new space, folks, we can fit easy few hundred in there. It's actually in an old gym, but it's Walk Your Plans, which is a really phenomenal concept.
Space. You'll have to come see it.
Yeah, it's builders. Again, it's just so weird how like all the planets align and everything you can imagine real estate is in one space.
Couple more questions and then we can wrap up here. But I wanted to ask, and it's probably one of the number one questions everyone asks, is what do you see happening in the market for this year, 2023?
Ooh, that's a great question. So first things first, what happened? We had 35 years of interest rates dropping. And then inflation started spiraling out of control, and we kind of had an overzealous Fed. And I didn't know this, but Barry Habib, he runs MBS Highway, very well-respected guy in our space. He said that basically everybody in the Fed has never worked in the private sector. And I was like shocked. And then I was like, no, that kind of completely makes sense because they react on, like 3, 4, 3, 6, 12-month-old data. Right. So his prediction, and like I said, I don't want to take credit for this. His prediction is that rates are actually going to substantially improve in likely May. He's not exactly sure when that actually will happen. Now, we've already kind of see them like cooling off because the inflation numbers have been getting better. But still, you kind of had a perfect storm. I mean, I've never seen rates move up that quickly in my entire career. But I also had been telling people for a period of probably 5, 6, 7 years where I was like, guys, 3% rates is not sustainable. You cannot go to a savings bank and put your money in there and you get 0.25% return. That's not sustainable. 2 to 3% is more sustainable. Now, I think we're at 4 or 5 return on certain accounts or whatever, but you can't have zero rates forever. So, I mean, there was people that we got into the one, I couldn't believe it. I was like, right. Please don't ever walk away from that. Like, you cannot ever walk away from like,
Did you get my dad 1.9?
I think so, yeah. Yeah. I'm not the type of guy that's going to lead you astray. I'm not the type of guy that's going to tell you when you run up your credit cards, use your equity in your property repeatedly. I'm the type of guy that's going to sit down and give you the hard nose, like right. Parent, okay, we see that you messed up on your credit card debt. Go ahead and consolidate it one time, cut up all the cards, blah, blah, blah. So needless to say, it kind of spiraled off on that. There's a lot of equity still in the market. It kind of ties into what I'm saying. There's still a lot of equity in the market to where credit card debt is through the roof. You still can like consolidate your debt. We're seeing on average in certain markets, again, across the board, 2 to 3% discounts on purchase prices versus this time last year. And again, I mean, I got clients that are still putting in full price offers. Realtors, I'm gonna be honest with you, like, I don't know, some of you are still allowing your clients to put in over ask. That is, speaking of Barry Habib, that's his, he gives calls and texts and emails and updates. I don't know how people are still allowing people to put in over ask price because that is something that we know is gonna come back to bite us all. We've seen the writing on the wall where that goes. Again, if somebody's long-term house, by all means, but just make sure you're explaining it. That's the only thing I could say because there's always buyer's remorse.
I think the biggest thing, and this is something that is really a goal of mine this year, is that realtors are not taught anything about investment properties. We're not taught how to analyze a property, how to calculate an ARV, the after repair value. We're just not taught any of that. It's a specialized thing that you have to go to a CE class or talk to me about. It's just not something that you're typically have a knowledge on. And so when it comes to analyzing properties, especially investment properties, it's really difficult for an agent who doesn't specialize in working with investors to do because they don't know, they're not watching that. Like I analyzed a property today, but all of the comps were from mid last year. Yes. So I knocked another 20K off that ARV because I said we have to be conservative here because it's a different market. It's a different market that we're in. So we can't do that. But until they really learn how to run that, like you said, it doesn't work.
Yeah. And a lot of brokers just kind of like are really laissez-faire, like hands off. And like in this market, you have to be the opposite. Like, you really have to tell people, like, you got to sit down and talk about investors and what makes them different and cash flows and ARVs and what does this mean, blah, blah, blah. And we as a lender offer a lot of, brokers to like come out and educate, their brokerages about this stuff. Cause to your point, like 30% of this market they're predicting in 2023 is going to be investors. So if you don't know how to put together an investment, good luck. I mean, you probably won't be here next year.
You think selling a single family and a duplex isn't that different? Like a lot of people think selling a 4-unit and a 5-unit isn't different. It's one more unit, right? Oh no, it's completely different. There's different contracts, there's different laws, there's different rules, different loans, everything's different. Even though it's one more unit, it's a completely different type of product. And I think a little bit more education there. I'm really honored that Kaz asked me to teach a CE class. So I'm teaching my CE class in March. I think it's March 9th for, it's honestly teaching other agents how to work with investors. This one's really just geared towards the buy and hold space, 1 to 4 units. We're going to do more on flipping and all of that, just to kind of help educate more realtors in how to do this. And then it'll help you in turn, because these over asking prices, just because they want their investor to get the deal, if they're out of state, they don't know the market. California people, $150,000 4-unit, they're jumping all over
Those are normally the ones that we see too, where, it's sight unseen, and it's like they really rely on the realtor to do right by them. But like, if you don't know it, and I preach this to my people all the time, I was like, guys, I got better by asking. You don't have to be Rick Rucker. And I still ask questions. I still ask my underwriter questions. I still ask, our reps in the non-QM space, questions. You're never going to know everything.
It's so funny because you just tagged on 2. I just did a video on things that you need to think about when working with investors. And we both just commented on 2 of them. So go to my page on my Facebook realtor thing, and you can see those little clips from all those different key points, because I think it's really important that people learn more about that.
I 100% agree. And, like I said, if there's any realtor brokerages that want us to come out and do an education on what the lending looks like, we're still going through the state trying to get approved for RCs for that specifically. But, again, we're a mortgage company or lending institution that really tries to drive value to our partners. There's a lot of people that were just in here with endless budgets to put on events that have nothing to do with us making money. And then there's people like us, like my sister, she's doing a women investing course. My people are going out to investor. We're going all the way out to Lake and Geauga County to get involved with their realtor association, ACAR. A lot of these realtor organizations, we're going and basically singing from the rooftops, let us come in and just really teach you how to correctly structure it, because there's not really a lot of lenders in our space that are doing it, if at all, that have the plethora of, different tools we have in our tool belt.
Yeah. And that's another really cool thing about Investor Source CLE is that all of us who are involved, we go to every networking event. We've always had a presence. And we go to them, like you said, to learn, to meet the people, to build that community. And we've found what works and what doesn't work. And we've taken all of that and put it together in this one really incredible event.
And just cleaned it up. And
and we provide food and drink, so it's not to like.
Drinks, exactly. But we can tell it's always best to learn by those that made mistakes and then became successful again. And I think there's a lot of investor groups out there, to your point. I'm not going to say a lot, but there's a decent amount where, other than, our guys obviously at local real estate, or Darien has an event at the Harry Buffalo, those guys are expert in their fields. But then there's a lot of guys that have never done a deal that are doing these investor groups, and you go there and you can kind of quickly tell who's who. We get rid of all that and we bring the people that we know that are actually on paper doing the business. It makes a big difference.
I agree. All right, last question is, I want to ask you, if a new investor is looking to get into investing, what is the piece of advice that you would give them?
Best thing,
where should they start?
Depends on which route you're going. If you're doing a multifamily deal, joint venture, you need a great joint venture partner who isn't going to burn you when it comes down to the money. There's a lot of gurus that preach the 100%, no out of pocket, blah, blah, blah. We get a lot of people that come to us asking that. And I'm like, you can do that, but oftentimes they're controlling the money, which you got to be aware of, and you got to be cognizant of who you're doing business with. But also, when you don't have any skin in the game, you don't control anything. So if anything goes awry, if a note gets called, you're screwed. So investors, stop coming to us looking for 100% financing. I guess that's my lead in. Either partner with somebody in your LLC that has the assets and you have the FICO, stop looking for, the reason why a lot of these notes are being called and why we're getting a lot of package deals come over is because people have no skin in the game and then they have no money. You know what I'm saying? So when things go awry and, something's wrong with the property, that's got to come out of your pocket, Right. So just be cognizant of going to these, I did it with no money down. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is a different market. I'm not saying that they didn't, but they probably got burned a lot. And, again, know that you're joint, who you're JVing with. Get your credit scores together. We have guys that can help you get your credit score. That's probably one of the next ones I feel like I want to do for Investor Source CLE is talk about credit. Assets and credit, and really, who your business partner is. And then you always want somebody, investors, you always want an agent that knows what they're doing. And every agent is not necessarily for investors. You know what I'm saying? A lot of agents we find are either working part-time, whatever. As an investor, you don't have time when it comes to getting answers for that person, for you to wait till that person gets off of work. You know what I'm saying? I quit everything I did, and I was making really good money as a DJ in 2013, but I quit everything I was doing because I said, I know that I'm never going to be 100% successful in this place or in this space if I don't put it all into it. You know what I'm saying? So just make sure that you know your lending partner very well. Again, I'm a very reputable person in this market. I'm closed north of 6,500 transactions between management and underwriting and selling myself. I've seen so many different scenarios in and out the door. So know your lending partner. Shout out to my sister. Obviously, she's a great asset. Chrissy, who's our rep down in Columbus. My guy Bo Styles down in the Akron market, very strong presence down there. He was already a wholesaler. I like going for guys that are already entrepreneurs,
right?
Because they understand the importance of when you do bring them a deal, making it work. My good friend Randy, he actually was an entrepreneur as well, came on board, and one of my fraternity brothers, Jelani, he's actually down in the Kent market. So I sing high praises of all my team. They are, they are a direct, I don't want to say descendant of me, but they're they are like me when you deal with them, and I overlook every file anyway. So a lot of people are like trying to push it all my way, and a lot of times, if I'm too busy, I'll have my people call, but they're the equivalent of me. We're all working as a team to get you to the finish line. So know your realtor, assets, credit. If you're going the JV route, know your JV partner. Come to Investor Source CLE. Because we'll tell you how to do it.
And you just said exactly. The whole reason I wanted to do this is because as an agent, my network is my value. Can I get you off market properties? Can I connect you with the people that you need to be connected with? And are they of good quality?
Yeah.
And as a new investor coming in, you don't have that yet. So you need it. Your network is your value, and that value can only be created with time and experience.
Correct. Yes.
So I want to do this and connect people with people like you so that I've already done the time and experience. I've already weeded out the ones who are terrible.
Yes.
And you can come to me and work with me, and I can give you that network that you want that's of a higher quality, who can close all the deals and have these creative ways to do about it. So that was a perfect way to go out. Why don't you tell everyone how to get in contact with you?
So you can go to either equitycmg.com and you can see my pretty face and all the people that work for me. Just kidding. Or
there's a great bow tie.
Yeah, I'm a bow tie guy. Or you can email me, rrucker@equitycmg.com. IG's Equity CMG. We try to keep it simple. YouTube, Equity CMG. You'll see some of highlights. I think actually our interviews on there that actually gives you information. Again, we're value add people.
Right.
And my cell phone, everybody has it, but 216-288-8642. I've had it since I was 19 years old, and I had a StarTech phone. So,
or just come see us the first Thursday of every month.
Exactly.
At Investor
Plug
Source
it right
CLE
back into Investor Source CLE.
All right, Rick, thank you so much.
Absolutely.